The following is a Claibs online production. Lunch with Claibs and Joe on claibsonline.com.
And a good Tuesday afternoon to you. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne as we bring you this week's edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe, as we'll be talking about a lot of Cardinal playoff baseball. The season just started, and here we are already in the postseason. Claibs, how you doing?
I am doing well. I am well rested, 2 days off, and we'll be ready for some baseball. I am planning on a long, prosperous October.
We're going to get into that and talk about the chances of that possibly happening. But we do want to mention first that this show brought to you by Ameren, Illinois, Mungenast, St. Louis Acura, and the folks at the Home Loan Expert, Ryan Kelly, the homeloanexpert.com, who's currently doing his Climb for Kids. Or did he already finish that? Did he make it to the top?
I think he just finished. As a matter of fact, I have a call into him today to see how things were going. They were trying to raise some money for a very worthy cause, but I will have an update. Maybe we'll get him on next week and talk about the climb.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And I know the folks at Mungenast, they provided Polo with a car this season. Polo and Benji doing all of the postseason games on 880 La Tremenda. And Claibs, we ran into a bit of an issue on Sunday's show, the pregame show, because Polo was talking about how he was going to spend his off days driving up to Chicago and then going to Tennessee and then Nebraska. And I quickly realized that Polo, being from California, did not have any idea where anything was in the Midwest.
He might be in Edmonton by now with the way he was talking about driving. One wrong turn in any one of those cities, man, and all of a sudden you're in another state. So I talked to him yesterday. I don't think he took you up on that. I think he decided to stay closer to home.
That's good. I told him that he didn't get to keep the car through the whole offseason, too. I think he's a little bit unsure of the agreement that was in place. So he needs a long postseason run if he wants to keep driving that 4Runner from the folks out at Mungenast. So let's get in to the postseason. The Cardinals, they win on Sunday. They get the 5 seed in the playoffs. The newly formatted postseason, 16 teams in the playoffs, 4 of those teams from the National League Central. I think where we need to start with this, and you and I haven't talked about this ahead of time, Mike Shildt announced the rotation last night. They're going KK in game 1, Adam Wainwright in game 2, and if possible, if necessary, Jack Flaherty in game 3. Remember, this is a best out of 3 series, all played in the higher seeded team's home ballpark. So the Cardinals, for the first time, are out west in San Diego for tomorrow's game. Your thoughts on the way the rotation's set up?
Well, I thought it was the obvious rotation. I mean, KK was your best pitcher. The fact that he's left-handed and San Diego doesn't hit lefties as well as they do righties. Throw in the fact that they've never seen this guy before. Okay, you can watch all the video you want, but until you actually get in the box and have a feel for what it's like, I think you have a little bit of an advantage. So I didn't have a problem with it or scratch my head over it. As a matter of fact, that's why I thought this would be the rotation.
Right. Earlier in the day, I guess on High Heat, on MLB Network's High Heat, Mike Shildt had initially said that it was going to be KK, Jack, and then Wainwright. And then later on that day in a press release, they announced that it was KK, Wainwright, and Jack Flaherty. So that I'm not saying, I'm telling you what the reports were that Shildt said on High Heat. I'm not talking about the show High Heat. I'm just telling you what was reportedly said on the show. And then it later came out that it was the rotation that we see now. And I was scratching my head at first because Jack Flaherty went into the season as your opening day starter. He was 4th in Cy Young last year. I get all of the intangibles and all of the potential that Jack Flaherty has, but in 2020, it just doesn't seem to all be clicking for Jack Flaherty. And you could say this with all 3 of those starters, that you would hate to have a series end without KK or Wainwright throwing a pitch. If Flaherty doesn't throw a pitch, and you get swept in 2 games, I think it is what it is. But your 2 best pitchers have been KK and Wainwright, and I think you have to go with them as your first 2.
I have no problem with it. And I think that the whole Flaherty thing, you're not the first person who said that where he's not right. Well, he was almost perfect last year.
Yeah.
You think about, with the exception of the one game where he got it handed to him, he kept his team in a lot of those games. I mean, he got shut out the other night. I mean, you look at the run support that he got throughout the course of the year, it's almost like Gibson-like, where they just don't score. Well, they didn't score for a lot of people this year. But point being this, and John Rooney and I were talking about this Sunday. I think more than anything else, Jack Flaherty is trying to be too perfect. I think the strikeout was something that he's always zeroing in on, and I don't think you need to strike out everybody. Because if you strike out everybody, then a lot of times you're going to run up your pitch count. A lot of times they're going to see all of your pitches. You let the guys behind you get a little work in too. I mean, he's got good enough stuff. When he starts to throw that slider, guys will top it and hit it to the third baseman or hit it to shortstop. There's a lot of things that he can do to neutralize the opposition, aside from trying to strike out everybody. So I think he probably put too much into that, and he chased the game instead of letting the game come to him. I think he was going to be fine.
I could see that being I have his game log up here right now, and the first game of the season, that July 24th game against Pittsburgh, he pitched 7 innings. That was the most innings. That was the deepest he went into a ball game the whole season. He had, when they came back from the COVID shutdown, he didn't make it out of the second inning against the Cubs, didn't make it out of the third inning against the Cubs on September 4th. And then he got shelled a little bit in that game against Milwaukee, 3 innings pitched, 9 earned runs in that one. But I mean, you look at it, 5 innings, 6 innings, and that tells me that's a guy that threw a lot of pitches, that you're not just taking Jack Flaherty out of the game just to take him out of the game to get your bullpen some work. You're taking him out because he's reached triple digits and you don't want to keep pushing this young pitcher any further.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the Cardinals were very careful with him and Dakota Hudson in that regard. Unfortunately for Dakota, he had the Tommy John, but there was never any real sync as far as Jack Flaherty being synced up. He had a very long layoff, and I never thought he was really on par as far as a routine was concerned. But you know what? He'll pitch on normal days rest, and we'll see what happens if we need him for game 3.
Yeah, so as of right now, we're live right now at 12:08 on Wednesday, or a Tuesday, I should say. We don't know who's starting for the Padres yet. They have not come out and announced it as of this moment, have they?
No, they haven't.
They saw something before I hit go live.
No, Lamette's supposed to throw a side today, and I think I think that's what it may hinge on how he feels.
He has a bicep issue. Clevenger has an arm issue.
Yeah, they both have the same thing. Now, word has it that maybe Clevenger might have had this when he was in Cleveland, and it just flared up again. But in any event, if you lose one of those guys, it really changes the dynamic of the series, because these are your 2 best pitchers, and Lamette's slider is just real nasty. So we'll just have to wait and see. There may be a little gamesmanship here too. You have a rookie manager. Skip Schumacher's the associate manager. So I'm sure Skip being around Tony La Russa for so many years, he knows how to kind of just, juggle things just a little bit to make your routine just a hair off.
There's plenty of Cardinal ties to this Padres team. Skip Schumacher, as you mentioned, the associate manager of the team. Greg Garcia is on the team. Tommy Pham is on the team. And Trevor Rosenthal was a trade deadline pickup, and he has been lights out for the Padres since joining them. And he's a guy that you hope you don't see in this series, because that means the Padres have a lead, and you got to try to do something. You got to try to get some hits off of him, which has not been easy to do since he moved out west. And then, of course, Fernando Tatis Jr., who the reports all season about the amount of tryouts that he had with the Cardinals. We all know his dad's history with the St. Louis Cardinals. So plenty of ties between the Padres and the Cardinals in this series.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it kind of says a lot about the makeup of their team from a character standpoint. Now, granted, they have a whole lot of fun, but they have some guys over there who know what a winning organization should look like. So we'll see a little Cardinal flavor in this series, I'm sure.
Have you talked to Pham since the series
Talked to him a little bit. He's excited, first because he's healthier. Secondly, it's postseason. Thirdly, it's the Cardinals. And while he wants to beat them, I mean, it's not like he has a bad memory about how his teammates treated him. He can get an argument with him about how he felt management dealt with him, but he's good with that. I mean, you know, it's a business to him, and that's what he's looking forward to. But I think the fact, like any player, you're looking forward to playing game 61 and beyond.
So I say he that first at bat, I wonder if how geared in, how locked in he's going to be, and how far he's going to try to hit that first pitch he sees.
You know, that's something that's changed a little bit about him. He and Yadier Molina probably think the game better than any two players I've ever talked to. He's just trying to do well. Hitting home runs, if you lay one in, yeah, he's going to hit it. But creating havoc and doing things to help his ball club, I think shows the mature side of him compared to if Tommy Pham was 27 or 28 years old and, you know, he was upset or whatever about this or that. Maybe he's a different player, but I think now he understands the importance.
Before we move on, and just to quickly run down all the other series we saw in Sunday's game, the Cardinals went with Dylan Carlson as their cleanup hitter, the youngest cleanup hitter, the first 21-year-old cleanup hitter the Cardinals have had since a guy named Albert Pujols did so back in 2001. Do you see him staying in that cleanup spot in the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to mess with that. What I would have done, I'd have hit him third in front of Goldschmidt, moved Goldschmidt to the cleanup spot. Goldschmidt's a run producer. But, you know, I like this. And I think my lineup is going to look like is Carlson, Bader, and Fowler. Tommy Edmonds playing third base. Brad Miller's my DH.
Instead of I would say what depends on the pitcher, what hand the pitcher throws with between Miller and O'Neill, or
yeah. In that case, yes.
Yeah.
But you know, and now here's the other question: do you carry an extra bat in a short series like this, or do you carry an extra pitcher that you may not ever have to use?
I mean, now that you have moved to having the DH, the strategy doesn't come into play anymore like it used to with needing that extra bat off the bench. You don't have to plan ahead like that.
Well, I disagree because I think you get into a late situation, they bring in a relief pitcher that maybe your guy in the order doesn't hit well. And if I got a guy that's sitting on the bench that may give us a different look, I might have to explore that.
But that's what I'm saying. You don't need the extra, though. You carry the extra catcher. I'm
going to carry the extra guy. I'm going to carry the extra back because I'm looking for matchups now, and I might have to use more than one matchup.
And this, how many are they going with from the roster for the postseason?
It's a great question.
I mean, that's the thing. This whole year, not one game this year could I have sat down and told you what the game day roster looked like because they changed it every single day. They had so many doubleheaders with the 29th man on the roster. They went from starting with 28 and they were going to take it down to 26 and they decided to stick with 28. And there were so many changes during the year. It has been so hard to follow what that roster looks like.
That's why I asked the manager every day, do you have any roster moves? Because I'm like you, it was hard to keep track of. But they're going to have to make a tough decision about who's going to be on and who's going to be off. And again, I wonder how many pitchers do you need in a 3-game series?
And yeah, you shouldn't need that many, especially when you have guys that can go deep like KK Wainwright and Jack, and then you wonder what does that mean for a pitcher like Carlos Martinez, who left the game hurt. And I was going to say he's on a roster. So you're going to have a lot of relief pitchers and not many start. I mean, you lost Carlos Martinez. You don't have
De Leon, Ponce de Leon and Gomber.
Right.
You're fine.
I was going to say, I think it should be really easy to come up with who the best pitchers are. By the way, you folks that are watching this can comment on the show, just as your good friend Clarence Gaines did, as he's switched over. He's trying to balance Cardinal and NBA mode, and we're going to get into some NBA talk here later on in the show. But your comments are welcome, and we can throw them right up there on the screen as you comment on the Facebook feed of that, as this show always available up on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel at Claibs Online. So that YouTube channel always up there afterwards. You can go back and you can watch some of the old videos. And I think we're going to try to do more stuff once with that YouTube channel moving forward, especially in the off season. So that's always there. Simple search, just Claibs Online on YouTube as well. As you look at the other playoff series, Claibs, the American League actually starts in about 45 minutes. That starts. You have Tampa and the Blue Jays, the Buffalo Blue Jays. You have the Indians and the Yankees, the Twins and the Astros, and the A's and the White Sox. Any of those American League wild card series jump out at you?
A's and White Sox and the Rays. Yeah, I think the Rays have enough to win the whole thing from the American League side. The Oakland team is short. When they lost their third baseman, that really hurt. But they're still a very fundamentally sound team. I think Bob Melvin's maybe one of the best managers in the game. You talk about him, you talk about Kevin Cash, you talk about Mike Schilt. You have to put in that conversation is what he's done in 2 years. But what Bob Melvin does out in Oakland, and that situation is such a distraction with the ballpark and the lack of fans before this year. But man, they fundamentally get it done, man. They're really good defensively and they can pitch a little bit. But I think Tampa right now has shown me the most in their skill set, offensively, defensively. Manager makes some interesting moves. Manager did something this year that never been done before the turn of the century of the 1900s. He put 9 bats in the lineup in a game. 9 left-handed hitters. Yeah. Never been done before. And so he's a creative guy. He takes advantage of it. So I like Tampa in the National League. I wouldn't want to mess with Cincinnati.
Nope. No.
They just do too many things. And interestingly enough, I picked Tampa to get in. To make postseason. I picked Cincinnati to make postseason. I picked San Diego to make postseason. And I said that there were going to be at least 2 teams from our division. What do we have? 4? 4 teams from one division. And I know people will look at the records and say, well, that record isn't very good. Yeah, because they were beating the hell out of each other. I mean, these teams are evenly matched. And the one thing about this division, everybody's got pitching as far as the teams that are in postseason. And whether the Brewers have it on the back end or the Cardinals have it on the front end and the back end, you look at Cincinnati, their pitching is deep. The Cubs have 2 guys. They've got Kendricks and they've got Yu Darvish.
Yeah.
And you know what? They'll flip a coin on Quintana and hopefully they can run him out there. Their bullpen is a little shaky, but everybody in this division has pitching.
I did the research. I went back and I looked through all the archives, and this is the first time in Major League history that 4 teams from one division have made the postseason. So I went back and I looked through all of the standings and records, and I can confirm that this is the case.
Well, considering that that's the first time we've ever had this, I'm glad. I bet that research didn't take very long.
I think it is funny, though, that the Pirates are the worst team by, I think it was 3 games in all of Major League Baseball this year. They only won 19 games. I think the next was the Rangers at 22 wins. I think that's very telling as to why 4 teams from the National League Central made the postseason, because they all got to beat up on the Pirates. And I don't think it's much of a secret either why the American League Central got 3 teams in, because they got to play the Pirates and they also got to play the Tigers a lot too. The Tigers weren't a very good team. So those are 7 teams that definitely took advantage of the odd schedule this year when it came to making the postseason. And I got to be, with the Reds, with their pitching, with Bauer, Suarez, and Sonny Gray, we talked about it, and we talked about the Cardinals having 3 starting pitchers in a 3-game series, best of 3 series. The Reds are going to be able to do the same thing and throw 3 guys out there that you do not want to face at all. And you talk about the White Sox too. The 7th seed in the American League. They could have been the 3 seed in the American League. They had a terrible weekend against the Cubs to finish it. That dropped them from 3rd all the way down to 7th, allowed the Twins and the Indians to pass them up in the standings. And, having to travel out west for the first time, probably going to throw them off a bit, but something they're going to have to get used to, I guess, in the postseason.
Well, you only have to make one more trip after this because they'll put everybody in a bubble after this. But you do make a good point about the travel, and look at the Cardinals, having to travel all the way west for the first time. So it's just another shingle on an inconvenient roof that we've lived under this entire season.
Those games get started in about 40 minutes. I want to say I think it's TBS and ABC for the first game. So you'll have baseball on ABC for the first time, and I can't even remember the last time that channel.
Back when they had Sunday night or Monday night baseball.
When was that?
Al Michaels and Howard Cosell and Tim McCarver. They had Monday night baseball at one point.
That's before I started watching baseball regularly.
You may not. I'm just trying to think. You may not have been born then. What year were you born?
85. I do not recall ever watching or hearing a Howard Cosell broadcast.
You got to be kidding me.
When did he pass away?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're too young to remember. But yeah, they had Monday Night Baseball in the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, before my time with that. Hey, we're powered by Ameren, Illinois here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe. As we move away from the baseball talk, big day in the NFL because it came out earlier this morning after week 3. All the games in week 3 finished up last night. You know what? It wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be between the Chiefs and the Ravens last night. I thought that was going to be a barn burner of a game. Didn't get that, but comes out this morning that 3 players and 5 members of personnel from the Tennessee Titans all tested positive for COVID-19. They have shut down operations there in Tennessee. The Titans just finished playing the Vikings, and they shut down operations in Minnesota as well. Kind of puts their games up in the air because both teams have said that they're not playing again, or they're not going to meet again until Friday. With I get you would have to move that game to Monday, right?
Well, if you move it to Friday, if you're not going to convene until Friday, what does that say? That you've eradicated the problem in the building? I mean, does that give you enough time to get tested and quarantined and to see if anybody else has contracted it? You may be right. They may have to move it back to next week and then have a short week the following week. But what happens if this thing really starts to spin out of control? And you've got a bigger issue, unlike baseball or the NBA or the NHL, where you can play the next day or you have a doubleheader down the road. The NFL doesn't have that luxury. And the way their schedule is set, where they're booked until the Super Bowl, they don't have an off weekend to make this up where it would count as far as playoffs are concerned. You may see them playing on a Wednesday night or Tuesday night. I just don't know if Monday is enough time. But if they think they have it under control, and I hope they do, but I think also we have to proceed with caution.
How crazy is this that, I mean, we know they wear the wristbands in the NFL that way they can figure out the contact tracing, and they already figured out that the 8 people with Tennessee came into contact with 48 members of the Vikings, players, staff, etc. So they were able to at least figure out the contact tracing there. But again, I don't know how deep that goes, the degrees of separation, because now that's 48 people in Minnesota. Do we know how many people they came in contact with? I'm not entirely sure how that.
Well, I'm sure that when they realized they had a problem, the first call they made was to Minnesota. And if I'm not mistaken, Minnesota shut their act down for a while too. So I just don't know what plan B is with regard to the time of making sure everyone was tested, to getting results, to then shutting everything down and making sure somebody else doesn't get it. Remember, you have some senior people in those buildings as far as coaches are concerned as well. So this is going to be a very interesting, next 3 days for the NFL.
Yeah, and I believe, and you want to talk about moving the schedule around and maybe shifting some of it. It's weird how this works out because the Vikings and Titans played each other this past Sunday. This weekend is supposed to be Vikings against the Texans and the Titans against the Steelers. So easily you could just say maybe the Steelers and Texans should play each other on Sunday. They just played each other last Sunday. So that you can't even really do that. I mean, you can't really fudge the schedule too much.
Here's the one thing you have working for you. Because you're not dealing with fans, you can throw that thing up on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean,
the last Tuesday game we saw, I believe, was it Vikings-Eagles after the roof of the Metrodome collapsed? You remember that with the snow?
Yeah.
And I think they moved that game. I think that was the Brett Favre Vikings that they moved that game to the to a Tuesday night to be able to play that after they were able to fix the field or figure out wherever they were going to play the game that week. I think that's the last time.
Stay tuned here because this thing doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon. And, you know, now every team in the league is now got to be on guard again. So I don't know where they go from here, Joe, because, again, they just don't have as many options as the other sports had.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you lock them all up and just say, hey, this is how it's going to be for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, now it becomes a major expense. But fortunately, see, here's what I always felt they should have done. They should have held these games at the practice facility. Everybody's got their own practice facility, you know, and a lot of times they have training camp at these practice facilities. And surely there's a hotel near the practice facility. So I think that, you know, and again, the expenses, you know, I'd love to get the bill. Well, I don't want the bill personally, but can you imagine the amount of money that's being spent to just get the games up and running? And this is in all sports, which leads me to this. And I'm getting off track here for a second.
I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I'm thinking back to Rams Park, now known as the Russell Athletic Center. I'm trying to figure out what a game there would look like.
Well, it's a football field. That's all you really need.
But I mean, the turf and everything isn't the quality of an NFL field.
Oh, I disagree. The turf on some of these practice fields is better than the stuff they play on Sundays.
I mean, I just hearing the stories of the Star in Frisco.
Fields. They have multiple fields too. No team has one field to practice on anymore.
Man, I'm from the times that I've been at Rams Park, I could not imagine a professional football game being played on that field.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah. By the way, so every week we are doing picks on Weekend Joe. I have me, you, my co-host Andy Hanselman, Brian Hoffman, and Frank Cusimano each and every week giving our picks. And Claibs, you went 5-0 this past weekend on the picks. You picked you picked 4.
Say that again, Joe, because I want to make sure Frank and Brian and everybody heard that. I went what?
You went 5-0. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You picked the Bears, the Bills, the Titans, the 49ers, and the Packers this past week. So you are 10-4 on the year. You were in first place with a 5-4 record going into week 3. So that shows the quality of our picking 2 weeks into the season. So now you are in sole possession of first place at 10-4. Frank Hoffman is 9-5. Frank is 8-6. Andy is 7-7, and I'm 6-8. I had a very good week though. I went 4-1 in my picks to bring me up to 6-8 on the year.
Who went 5-0 again?
You went 5-0. Yeah, we threw 5 games out there, and Claibs, you got all 5 of them right.
I just want to make sure everybody heard that.
Yeah, 5-0 on there. Okay. How are your? Do you throw any money out on the games or anything like that? Okay. I do fantasy. I did DraftKings in week 1 and lost in all 3 games I played and didn't want to do that anymore. So I didn't like losing $2-3 at a time.
Fantasy guy. But you know what? I gotta be honest with you. I kind of got bored with it. And I say that because I was reasonably successful and I just didn't find it to be as much fun because you know, the fantasy football leagues have now taken on a new look with regard to preparation and information that's available. So somebody asked, and so I was in a league with a relative a few years ago. It's $5,000 a man, $5,000 a team.
Jeez.
Yeah, this was people from all over the country. So I think it was $150 per transaction or $200 per transaction. So it was a pretty big pot of matchsticks. And And we won this thing like 3 out of 5 years, finished in second place once and third place once. And it was a grind because, there was so much more at stake. But now, guys have programs on how to monitor this stuff as far as the games and the players and things of that nature. And the other thing that I think that people kind of overlooked when it came to fantasy, you need to know who the coordinators are. All right. Because the coordinators don't change their stripes very much. And that's the matchups people should be looking for. Like if I'm playing the Jets and Greg Williams is running the defense, now I'm getting ready to look for a lot of exotic blitzes. I'm going to look for some different coverages. So I need to make sure the team that Greg Williams is playing against, that quarterback can recognize things. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it other than, the injuries these days. And that's, it was fun, but, I moved on.
I don't do that much research, but I'm not playing in $5,000 games either. With that, I went with the thinking this year.
Matchsticks, okay. This was not cash. All
right? I went with the thought this year that Josh Allen was going to have a very good season, so I picked him up in both leagues. And so far, that strategy has worked for me and worked pretty well.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah, he. So far so good for me. With that, hey, since I believe our friend Clarence Gaines still watching here, well, let's talk about the NBA Finals. Let's talk about that game 1 of the NBA Finals, as it's going to be Heat against the Lakers. This is the 10th NBA Finals for LeBron James, as he looks to win ring number 4 in his career.
Phenomenal career. But let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers first. Going back to the finals, if they win this year, they will now have as many championships as the Boston Celtics. So we can, dispel that. They've gone to the finals, 26 times since Jerry Buss or the Buss family has owned the team, and that goes back to the 80s. It's a phenomenal run that they're on. Now, with that said, this Miami Heat team is a pretty good team. I think Eric Spoelstra is one of the most underrated coaches in the game. He doesn't get a lot of credit, but he's won with a couple of different looks, not necessarily a number of household names. Pat Riley is the guy who kind of engineers this thing. They've got a great general manager also. This will not be an easy task. There'll be some interesting matchups for sure. And I'm going to enjoy it. Now, I know I was talking to Frank Cusimano earlier. He said Madison Avenue may not like the matchup. And I'm like, what's wrong with having two of the top 10 TV markets in the country playing against each other? It's not the Knicks, and the Knicks don't deserve to be there. Nope. The Boston Celtics had their chance, and I know everybody thinks Brad Stevens is the next great guru. I haven't seen it yet. I think Spoelstra showed everybody that who really runs that neighborhood. But overall, it's going to be a fun series. Some interesting matchups. Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo can rebound with anybody, and then he's going to have to deal with Dwight Howard. I think if there's one element, the Lakers might be a little longer and a little deeper up front. There may be better guard play from Miami. Jimmy Butler's an X factor. He's a really good player that I think people are starting to see. So who knows, man? This is going to be very interesting. If I'm not mistaken, both Spoelstra and Frank
Vogel.
Yeah, I think they were both video guys. They weren't former players.
Right.
And so
I know Spoelstra was. I'm not sure of Vogel's background.
Yeah.
I know
Spoelstra comes from a basketball family. His dad's been involved in the game for forever. So this is nothing new to him. And the Lakers coach has been around for a while too. So I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And, kudos to Denver and certainly Boston and them giving, good effort. Denver's just a veteran away, in my opinion, of being a legitimate contender. Boston, I'm just not sure. I know everybody thought Gordon Hayward was going to be the answer. I didn't think he helped at all with regard to these games. I know he had one good game, and then after that, I think the ankle really never gave him the jump that he needed. So they got to make some decisions about their organization too down the road as far as players they want to bring in. And I'm sure they have to look at what they're going to do with Jason Tatum here down the road contractually. So It's going to be an interesting offseason because it'll be a quick offseason as far as the draft and free agency and things of that nature.
Boston probably could have used a lot more Taco if they would have if they wanted to beat the Heat in that series. But look,
Taco. Hey, I think Taco's an interesting player, but Taco or his dad wouldn't have been able to help them beat the Miami Heat. He's just not there yet.
I mean, I look at, first of all, the only thing I care about in the NBA right now is that Billy Donovan's the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. That makes me very happy that they have moved away from
let me ask you a question.
Head coaches. Yeah.
Billy Donovan or Doc Rivers? Doc Rivers, a Chicago guy. I wonder.
Is he a Chicago guy?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I wonder if Doc Rivers had been let go a week earlier, would he be in the running for that job?
There were plenty of names out there for Chicago to choose from. So I think with how fast they went after Billy Donovan, I think kind of shows how much they wanted him, how badly they wanted him to be there. So I do think that was I think that's why they did that before all the other pieces kind of got laid out there. So I'm happy with that. I do think it's a little ironic that Florida is probably the only state in the country right now that can hold a championship parade. The Lightning win the Stanley Cup last night, and now the Heat have a chance to win the NBA title. And like I said, there's not going to be, if the Lakers win, there's not going to be a parade going on in California anywhere. If the Stars would have won, there wasn't going to be a parade in Texas, only in Florida, and that's who's helping out. By the way, Clarence Gaines did just throw out there that Vogel served as a student manager for the Wildcats and with Rick Pitino. And there you go. So Clarence Gaines still just throwing stats out there for you, Claibs.
He's another video guy.
Yeah.
By the way, you know what? When I win the quadrillionaire lottery, you know, the big super mega duper.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy an NBA team, and I'm going to just give Clarence Gaines the keys to it, and just say, "Hey, Clarence, just let me know when the finals start, and I'll come back. I'll come to the games, but just let me know when the finals start." There is, and I've been in this business a long time. And
make sure you have Fish. You hire Fish to do all the sideline reporting.
Oh, I'm gonna move him up. Yeah, I'm gonna let him do some other stuff. But here's the thing:
as long as he can show off his shoes.
A long time, and I've gotten to know owners and general managers and players and front office executives. Clarence Gaines may be the most complete individual when it comes to organization that I've ever been around. And I don't say that because he's a friend. He's got great basketball bloodlines as far as his dad being one of the greatest coaches to ever coach in college. He understands the salary cap. He understands the European game, and he understands people. And why he's not running the team is a mystery to me. Probably more on his doing than anyone else's, but they don't make him any better than this guy. Period.
I mentioned the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup last night. We could have had one hell of a Wednesday with 8 baseball games, game 1 of the NBA Finals, and a game 7 in the Stanley Cup. But it didn't work out that way. The Lightning finish it in game 6, and how about Patty Maroon wins the Stanley Cup for the second straight year as a member now of the Lightning. Last year with the Blues. I believe he has moved down to Tampa. I think he has a home in Tampa.
I don't blame him. I'd move there too. Yeah. We'll see him at some point. I was going to
say hometown hero times 2.
Yeah, it's a great situation for a guy who took a significant pay cut to stay in the National Hockey League. And you think about John Cooper, who got his coaching start here in St. Louis. Good St. Louis roots to the Stanley Cup for this year. And I thought they were a good team. You know, I think last year when they got knocked off in the first round, hell, they were the best team going. Blues would have never beat that team last year. But they didn't make it. They stayed together, and they made a couple of subtle acquisitions along the way. And that's an organization that's set to run for a couple more years. I mean, Victor Hedman he's as good of a defenseman as there is in the game. You get a healthy Stamkos back. You get Point that's continuing to grow. Kucherov is a guy, when he wants to play, is a very effective player. Goaltending is very solid for years to come. And they got a couple of good kids in their minor league organization as well that they will look to break through. So Tampa is a team that I don't want to use the word dynasty. I think it's just so hard in a salary cap driven era. They have some players that can really put them in the hunt for the next 3 to 4 years.
We saw it, and it's a trend that we're going to have to get used to over these next 5 weeks, because we saw it last night with the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup, and it just you know, here in St. Louis, we remember what that looked like, even though it happened in Boston last year, even though the Blues won it in Boston in front of the crowd there in Boston. We still remember just how special that was. All the media on the ice, everybody out there, you know, covering it. And we saw last night, and it just did not feel the same way. And we're about to experience that over the next week with the NBA Finals, being in the bubble with no, I guess, family in the stands, but no fans in the stands, and the media keeping their distance the way that they have been. And it's going to be this, I tell you what, it's going to be very, very weird turning into that Cardinals Padres game tomorrow and trying to convince yourself that it's October baseball, not being the October baseball that St. Louis Cardinal fans have been used to over their lifetimes.
I've gotten over it. I mean,
do you think it's going to be different, though, knowing that it's the postseason?
No, I think players understand. I think players appreciate it more because of everything they've gone through to get there. You know, we like to make ourselves important, that be it the fans. And there is a place for fans, don't get me wrong. But once you start playing the game, if you're worrying more about the fans than you are the guy that's on the mound or the guy who's in the batter's box, and we got bigger problems. And I think that players have found a way to find the inner motivation that maybe fans gave them at some point. But when it's all said and done, you still have to play. The bubble thing, I think, has been challenging. There was some teams that I saw in both the NBA and the NHL that looked like they couldn't wait to get out of it. You know, because you only need one or two guys who doesn't want to be there. They miss their family. They're not playing well. The isolation is tough. And that's one of the things about the Cardinals and why I think they have a more legit chance than people give them credit for, because they've endured the bubble, their own self-imposed bubble. And if they get past San Diego and they get into this bubble, they got more training on that than anybody in baseball. And I think that's going to work to their advantage. But back to your original point, I think people, I know me as a broadcaster, I've kind of gotten used to it, and I miss it. I miss the people. I miss seeing the people. But you know what? It's a change that we all have to adjust to. And we hope that we don't have to deal with this next year. Just like we talked the other day about spring training. What's spring training going to look like next year?
Right.
You know,
yeah,
so
we already know it's starting a little later. It's going to be shortened. And, you know, we're sitting here, it's the end of September, and that's going to be starting the end of February. There's no telling what kind of access we're going to be allowed to have in 5 months, and
Absolutely.
we're going to have under control. It's very weird to think about at the moment. But finally, by the way, you were talking about missing the people. Polo also mentioned to me during What's in the Cards, which we are continuing, by the way, through the postseason. Do you have fans bring you cookies and brownies and treats to the broadcast booth? Because apparently Polo and Benji get that all the time.
They ask for food on the air, so I mean, you know, I don't. No, I bring my own food,
right?
You know, so I'm good. But yeah, they probably ask for food on the air, and you know,
makes sense. Yeah,
it says one thing. It says that people are paying attention to what they're saying. You know, so that's a good thing. So. And by the way, you know, I hear Polo when he's doing his thing with you, because he's like 2 booths down from me. And you know, Polo has he's got a big voice.
Yeah.
But there's, you know, I walk by their booth every day, and they have just been such an asset to the Cardinal Radio Network, Spanish language. But the fact that, you know, we're all good friends and we sit and talk the game. And they don't make them any better than him and Benji. And they've just been terrific for what the Cardinals are all about. And I know they've got some people who listen and pay attention to it. I keep working on my Spanish, and I'm going to be there at some point. But they have been a delight, 2 real professionals, and we're very fortunate to have them be part of what we do.
I'm not saying this because I work with you and Polo. I've said this before. I had any kind of relationship with you guys, but when you look at the TV side the Cardinals have with Danny Mack, and I guess this year would have been only 3 guys that he worked with. Usually it's 4 guys when you throw McCarver into the mix. When you look at the history of Rooney and Shannon calling games, and you look at the chemistry between Horton and Rooney when they call the games on the road, and you throw Polo into the mix, the Cardinal fans are so lucky with the broadcasters that they have bringing them the game each and every day all season long. And I know you just did something with Danny Mack for the magazine you write for.
Yeah, we did a little piece in Town and Style magazine. You can go online and check it out, or you can pick it up at your local Schnucks, Deerbergs, and all fine locations around town. And just catching up with them. Danny Mack has been a great friend for a number of years. And, we only see or hear him from the ballpark. So I wanted to ask him some questions that, he normally doesn't have a chance to answer. And speaking of the magazine, next month, I think it's Orlando Pace.
Very good.
Yeah. And, the Big O still we have so many Hall of Famers that still live here in St. Louis. And to get a chance to still connect with them, you have to remember, I probably, for every Hall of Famer that's in a Hall of Fame, I probably watched him play. Or I know him personally. And so when I catch up with them, it's great to do that. And you see how they've evolved after their careers. Big O's been out of the game for 10 years, and he's starting to ache a little bit. But the point being, we're very fortunate to have a number of Hall of Famers who live here in the St. Louis area. We need to do a head count on how many do we actually have now. Let's see.
You're talking all the sports?
Yeah, all the sports.
It would take you a while. And people, realize, Marcus Allen lives in the area.
Yeah.
That's, a name to throw out there. And there's probably quite a few that you don't realize live here that still do, because they keep a low profile.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, unless you're a golfer, you're probably not seeing Marcus Allen out everywhere.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, or his next door neighbor. That's maybe the only time you see him. But it says a lot about our community as far as how people like to settle in. And, even when they retire from the game from another city, they find their way back here. And that's really cool that we can still hang out and talk to those folks. So
before we get out of here, Mizzou loses to Alabama last weekend by a final score. Let me see if I had it here. What was the
covered? That's all you should worry about.
I was going to say, I know the over hit, but it was 38-19. They lost to Alabama. They have Tennessee this week. No line has been put on that game yet, but I know Mizzou will be the underdog.
They're going to be the underdog in just about every game early on. I thought that they played well considering the circumstance. You're playing Alabama. It's the first game of the year. Your first game as a head coach at this program. And a lot of things were moving around at that time. I thought they held their own. I tipped my captain, Nick Saban, because, he could have pinned it on him. He had the talent, but he wanted to see what his other kids could do other than his starters, because he's going to need those kids before the season is over with. So I was happy with the direction of the game. You obviously would like a better outcome, and I think that will come in due time. But when you open up the season against the number 2 team in the country, and this is your first rodeo, could have been worse.
As we wrap things up here, tomorrow is the start of the postseason. Those games will be televised nationally, but also broadcast on the radio locally. Is Mike Shannon doing the playoffs?
Well, Mike Shannon, John Rooney, Ricky Horton, all 3 of them will be on the call. I'll have the pregame show and the manager's show.
What time is all that getting underway?
We start everything at 3:12 on the Cardinal Radio Network, and I think first pitch is a little after 4. So we got plenty of pregame information coming your way. Kevin Wheeler will be driving that bus as well. So we're all hands on deck right now. And Benji and Polo are going to be doing it as well.
Yep.
So whatever language you like, be it English or Espanol, we have it for you.
Very nice. So you could have it on the TV, mute the TV, and listen to the guys on KMOX or 880 La Tremenda if you want to work on your Spanish with Benji and Polo. Polo and I will have the game preview up a couple hours before the start of the series, and we will be going the entire postseason with that. So hopefully, Claibs, when you and I revisit next Monday, hopefully we are still talking about Cardinal baseball in the NLDS as they would be facing the winner of the Dodgers and Brewers series, the way the brackets work out.
Well, I'm planning on being here one way or the other, so I'll rather be talking baseball. So we'll see how things work, and we'll go from there.
This has been Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, Munganess Alton Toyota, and also financed by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Go to all of Ryan's social media pages right now. Check out the Climb for the Kids and find out how you can donate to the great cause that Ryan does each and every year. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Joe Roderick. We will talk to you next week, everybody.